Hi folks, welcome back. Thank you for watching. Please do hit subscribe if you haven't done so yet. It really does help when you do that. So, welcome to the end of month Q&A for August 2021. First thing from me this month, sorry if the lighting looks a bit weird in here. Literally all of my ceiling lights have just died, and it's not just a case of replacing the bulbs, they're kind of self-contained units. So the electrician has been called, but they're not here yet. So sorry if it looks a bit weird, we're just going to have to live with it this month. I've got my kind of film studio lights turned up really bright, so it probably looks like I'm trying to read you a ghost story, but anyway, we'll just have to go with it. But we've got a lot of your questions to get through today, so we're going to crack on as soon as we can. So, first up this month, Mike K. Great topics, learned new information and enjoyed. Brilliant, that's what these Q&As are all about. Also, I'd be interested to know how you mic things up for your videos. Now, I have had a shot at shooting some sort of behind the scenes type stuff in the past, and to be completely honest, nobody watched them. There just didn't seem to be much interest there. But this month alone, I've had a few people ask about how I mic up guitar amps and mix the audio. So if you would like to see a video about that, let me know in the comments, and if there's enough interest, I will put something like that together. Zachary Drummond. Neat product. I wish you had given us an AB against a 57 or 609 just to have a control sample. I don't know what your tone really sounds like. And this was the Sam Systems Integral IM12 sort of internal miking system that I demoed a few months ago. To be honest, that was what I wanted to do with that video, but the manufacturer requested several times that I didn't. And their reasoning for that was the whole selling point of the IM12 was isolation. So you captured just the sound of the speaker and nothing else around it. Whereas if you compare it to an external mic, you would capture cab resonance and room sound and stuff like that. So it wouldn't be a fair test. So they kind of put their foot down and said they didn't want me to shoot a comparison with other mics. I'm sure more cynical people out there might speculate other reasons why they didn't want their product compared to things that everybody else uses and are familiar with, but I'll leave that up to the comment section. Bad Men. And the winner is the Gibson ES330. So this was the Retrosonic flanger comparing the new version to my original Mistress. Yeah, to be honest, it's a little bit unfair bringing the 330 out for any demo video because it makes literally everything sound good. So yeah, it's an astonishing sounding guitar, and that 330 is a real favourite of people whenever I bring it out for a demo. Bill Ayres. Hey Joe, forgive me, what the jeepers is triple mono? Do you just split your signal to 3 amps? Is that just for the richness of the combined frequency response? I listened to why wet, dry, wet is problematic and I totally get it, but I would love to know a teeny bit more about triple mono if you'd be so kind. So this was an old pedalboard demo from, when was it? 2019. And I mentioned in that I was running triple mono, and basically all it was a single mono signal split into 3 different amps. So 3 amps all receiving exactly the same thing. So it was kind of like a wet, dry, wet, but without the sort of wet, dry element to it. It was just 3 amps receiving the same thing. And yes, absolutely, the reason for doing that and why I used to do that was to combine different tonal characteristics. If you take an amp that's quite mid-pushed and an amp that's quite mid-scooped, they kind of slot together and fill in the gaps around each other and give you a more sort of full frequency representative sound. And the other reason I liked doing that was because with having amps of different tonal characteristics, you could kind of highlight sort of positives and negatives of pedals, for example, by running them into different amps at the same time. So it would make certain amps sound fizzy, and then the whole audio would sound fizzy, and we kind of highlight that element of it. To be honest, nowadays, I haven't used more than 1 amp in a demo video for quite some time, and I'm favouring a similar approach, but using 2x12 cabinets. So instead of having 2 amps running together, I've got just 1 amp running, but into 2 different speakers. And I deliberately pair speakers with opposing characteristics as well for exactly the same effect, but just at a slightly more civilian volume. Because there was a time when I was running like 2 30-watt amps in a tiny room flat out, and it was just destroying my hearing. It was going to knock a wall down, pictures were falling off the wall downstairs, and it was just getting a bit much. So just using a 2x12 and 1 amp, it brings the level down just enough to make it sort of tolerable in this room, but also it achieves a similar effect of blending 2 amps and what I was doing with that. But great question. Triple mono was just 3 amps receiving exactly the same signal running at the same time. Enrico Palazzo. I don't think there's been a single Q&A where you haven't been featured as someone asking a question, Enrico. Great video, Joe. I have a question that is not connected to this video, but I have to ask. Do you ever take breaks from playing? There are days where I really don't have the desire to play, mostly in summer because it's getting so damn hot here in Italy, and just turning on the amp brings even more heat. Yeah, I feel you. In a tiny room with like 4 amps here, if I'm running more than one, you just get baked in this room for sure. And when I take breaks, I feel kind of guilty because I have expensive equipment that I always wanted to have and I'm not using them. How do you manage to balance a desire to play with the need of a break? I take lots of breaks, to be honest with you, Enrico, and that's for various reasons. Heat is one of them, and I know we don't get it half as bad here in the UK as you do in Italy, but this summer we had a couple of weeks where it was 35, 36 degrees, and shooting especially videos where I have to make noise, I have to have the windows behind me shut, which are kind of hidden behind that sort of curtain thing to block the light out. I have to have the door shut. I've got amps kicking out heat, the iMac kicking out heat, all that stuff, and it does just get intolerably hot in this room. So heat is one of them, but it can be literally anything. And as some of you might have seen on this channel, I did make a short film a few years ago about some health problems that I live with, and that makes it very difficult a lot of the time to find the motivation to pick up a guitar. Some days, and as I know everybody will be able to relate to this, you pick up a guitar and you're just not feeling it, and you're just making noise and you're playing more wrong notes than right notes, and you just leave it and come back the next day and everything sounds amazing and you're really productive. So yeah, absolutely take breaks. And I really wouldn't feel guilty about taking breaks. As we all live very complex lives nowadays, and we go through lots of different things, and some days you just don't feel like playing. Some weeks you don't feel like playing. And I think just accepting that that's absolutely fine and coming back to it when you're ready to come back to it. That's all I can really do, to be honest, is just kind of listen to what I'm able to do on any one day or week or month, and just kind of go with the flow on that. But don't feel guilty about taking breaks. We all need breaks from even the things we enjoy the most, I think. Monkey Magic. I've said this before. Declaring that you're being paid / getting something out of a review is key for me. You do that, Joe. Much respect. Thank you. And yeah, it's a very important thing for me too. Not to mention a legal requirement here in the UK, at least. There was some law, it has a really weird name. I think it was like the influencers law or something, which I don't consider myself an influencer, but it's essentially if you are being provided with a product or you're being paid to make a video or anything like that, you have to declare that interest. So whenever you watch one of my videos and you see the sort of include paid promotion thing at the top, it means that I'm working with a manufacturer in some capacity to bring you that video. And I think that's important to declare because I'm very careful about what products I agree to review, and I want to be pretty certain that the product that I'm reviewing, I'm going to love it. I'm not really in the business of the worst product ever, thumbnails and things. It's not really how I like to do things. I like to play things that I love and inspire me. So when a company gets in touch and asks me if I'll demo something, I look at the company, I look at the product, and I want to be very sure that it's I'm the right person to shoot that video. But yeah, I think in declaring that you've gone through that process is a very important thing because, as a demo person, you have to be aware that the manufacturer who's lent you the product or given you the product or paid you for a video is going to see what you say. And you want to kind of maintain relationships so you get more work. That's kind of how this business works. But equally, you don't want to be dishonest and say something's great when it's not. So it's a whole complex thing, and you cannot be completely impartial, or I do my best to be, but you can't be fully impartial when a manufacturer sort of lent you a product and they're kind of waiting to see you show it off in the best light, and then you turn around and say it's rubbish. I don't like getting into that side of things. But yeah, declaring that you have that interest is a very important thing. It's been a very hot topic in the last kind of year or so. I think, which channel was it? Was it In the Blues? Did a feature about why it's important to declare that interest when shooting demo videos, and I completely agree with everything in that video. And as I said, it is a legal requirement in the UK to declare that you're working with a manufacturer. Paul Stafford Cook, and I love this comment. Firstly, check out Paul's channel, it's amazing. Hi Joe, some great advice here, no arguments from me, and this was my advice for starting and running a gear YouTube channel. There's just one thing I feel I want to mention in case it helps any of your viewers. In terms of sound quality, I broke all the guidelines on that one and still seem to be gaining subscribers, thankfully. All I have is my iPhone. I don't own any computers, DAWs, interfaces, etc. Brackets, I'm old. Whilst I simply cannot claim to have professional levels of sound quality, I've I've worked out how to make the best of it. I placed my iPhone horizontally on a selfie stand, the mic part of the phone around 12 inches from the guitar amp's grill cloth. I then play at bedroom volume so as to get the sweet balance of capturing the nuances from the speaker and yet not clipping the iPhone's mic. My subscribers seem to like the tones, and so with some practice you can achieve some nice results. Okay, I'm not specifically a gear demo channel, although I do demo lots of gear, but if your USP allows, it's an option I thought I would mention. Cheers, Joe, keep up the good work. And I think this is a very, very good point, because I mentioned in my advice for starting and running a gear YouTube channel that sound quality is infinitely more important than video quality. And it really bugs me when I watch a video that someone's recorded on their phone saying, oh, can you hear the low end on this amp? And you can't hear anything from 1K down. And it's distorting and compressing and phasing as they move it in the axis of two speakers. And it can just be a mess. But as Paul very rightly sort of pointed out, two things here. Firstly, knowing how to use the gear you've got is much more important than getting better gear. And, for years I used a very budget interface on this channel, £100 interface, and got some really good results. And it was simply because I knew how to use it and get the best results out of it. So that's the first thing. But also, technology is improving all the time at a very quick rate. Is it Moore's law that says that technology halves in size and doubles in power every 18 months or something? So when I said that you can't record a decent quality audio on a phone, I think that was probably true 5 or 6 years ago. But I bought my first new phone in about 12 years at the end of last year. And when I'm, playing, just here in this room, and I come up with a song idea that I want to kind of, jot down so I don't forget it, I just open the voice memos and hit record so I can capture that idea. And the voice memos I record nowadays aren't distorted. They're pretty compressed, but they're not distorted. And the modern technology kind of adjusts for that. So I think it's absolutely true that nowadays, yes, you probably can achieve very good results with just an iPhone, for example. And that technology is improving all the time. So having good gear is not as important as knowing how to use the gear and all that sort of stuff. But very important point, and I do urge you to check out Paul's channel. He covers some amazing sort of ground on there. Dan Bakowski, I'm curious on your ideas about different presenting formats. Yourself and others who don't mind presenting in person often have some balance of talking and playing. Others I've seen, such as the pedal board, have just the guitar playing and use on-screen captions to comment on what's being heard. Do you have an opinion on whether one approach might generally be more successful than the other? Not so much, really. I think, as a consumer of gear demos, because I watch plenty of them myself as well as making them, I don't really mind how it's presented as long as it gives me a good balanced overview of whatever the product is. So let's say it's a pedal, for example, as long as the audio's good, the playing's all right and the guitar's mostly in tune, and it goes through all the different settings of the pedal and shows me how it sounds in that particular rig, that's fine. I don't mind if someone's talking on camera or it's text on the bottom of the screen or whatever. I think the content is much more important than the presenting style. But that said, my earliest videos on this channel, which were pretty terrible, to be honest, if you look back at them, I started off doing the kind of text on screen thing and just having like a body shot from here to here of me playing and, not showing my face, not speaking or anything like that. And that was purely because I just wasn't comfortable talking to a camera. And presenting is definitely a skill you learn the more you do it. And I think especially in the kind of COVID era where we're all talking to webcams on Zoom and things every day, a lot of people are becoming more comfortable doing that now. So I certainly had to learn how to talk to a camera and present a product. And even when I started talking on camera, if you go back and watch some of those early videos, it's quite funny to watch back because you could see how uncomfortable I was doing it. And I would want to get the intro done as quickly as possible. So I wouldn't sit here kind of talking normally and introducing a product. I'd just go, here's a pedal, here's what it's based on, here's how it sounds. And that was it. And it made no sense and everything was really garbled and, I just wasn't comfortable. But as time's gone on, I've become, more comfortable presenting. In terms of, having a sort of introduction and then playing as a sort of spoken feature versus text, I think both are fine. And one thing I always try to stress on this channel is, especially if I have a longer intro on the video, the intros aren't for everybody. And I do exactly the same thing. I skip intros all the time as well, but they're there for the people who want it. And some people, offer constructive criticism, shall we say, in the comment section saying there's 6 minutes of talking before you play a note. And it's like, well, yeah, if you want that information, it's there. If you want to skip to the playing, that's fine. It's there if you want it. And I can see from the sort of analytics on YouTube that probably only 50% of people watch the spoken intro, but that still means it's relevant to 50% of people. So it's there if you want to watch it. If you want to watch a video, if I'm watching a demo video, for example, and I don't know anything about the product, having that kind of 5-minute introduction explaining it is really useful. If it's a product I know about, I just want to hear it, I'll skip the intro as well, it's fine. But I think all presenting styles are absolutely fine, providing it actually delivers the content and explains the concept or the product well and gives you the answers that you're looking for as a consumer. So yeah, I don't really have too many opinions on it. I watch both types of demo that you refer to there. I'm happy with either, providing it's good quality and actually answers the questions that I've got as someone who wants to watch those demos. Steve Dennis, astonishing Joe, Walrus Audio produces the 385, a version of an amp from a Bell & Howell Cine projector. Your Akai is in a similar vein. Maybe mod it into a pedal. You could call it the real OD. And this is something that quite a few people mentioned about how good that old tape machine preamp sounded into an amp, and it should be a pedal. Now, I have a vague memory, and hopefully you guys can help me out on this, of seeing a pedal that was actually based on an Akai preamp. And it wasn't one of the big manufacturers. I think it was like a small-time, probably American, sort of build-it-in-a-shed type manufacturer. But I'm sure there is a pedal out there which is an Akai tape preamp in a box. Please do let me know if you know which pedal that is. I'm sure I've seen it, but I cannot find it, even searching for it on Google. So let me know. But yeah, it did sound great, and it might be fun to put that little preamp in a pedal format someday. I certainly don't have the skills to do that, but maybe somebody could. Phil Corey, top stuff fella, if I get the faculty together, maybe I could interview you for my channel sometime. It's only an idea and would do me more good than you, I guess, but it seems you'd have an interesting story. Great channel. We did that last week, and I believe it's now live on YouTube, so I'll put a link, whichever side it is that it appears. It was great to chat to Phil, a great guy, and yeah, we spoke. It's only short, 6 or 7 minutes or something, but it was great fun doing it. We had a few technical gremlins with the audio, but we worked with it, and yeah, check it out if you want to hear me talking about, how I transitioned from playing piano to guitar and why I like, certain bits of gear. It was great fun chatting to Phil. Yusuf Kasim, man, that sounds better than a lot of fuzz pedals out there, but who's going to play this live or in a gig unless you're Richie Blackmore? Yeah, that's a fair point. It is a massive sort of, was it 24-pound sort of tape machine? Weighs a ton, but yeah, some people gig with Echoplexes and things still to this day, so maybe somebody will. I had a question. What's your one dirt fuzz, treble booster or overdrive pedal you can't live without? To be honest, Yusuf, I don't really have one because I change my opinions so much. And especially this year, I've really been getting into just using no pedals. I know it sounds bizarre for me to say that, but just taking the guitar, plugging it straight into an amp and turning it up. And I've really been enjoying that kind of straight into the amp approach. And I know that makes me sound like one of the kind of whingers from over on the gear page, but I've just been really enjoying that approach. So I don't really have one. And I love so many different dirt pedals. But then, if I couldn't use that pedal and could only use another one, you find a way of making it work. Same with guitars. And people ask me, what's your favourite guitar that you could never live without? And to be honest, if somebody said that I could only play a Strat or a Tele or a 335 or an SG or Les Paul for the rest of my life and I had to pick one, any of them, you can make it work. So I don't have a favourite pedal, really. If I absolutely had to choose one, the Kingsley Page has really impressed me in the last year or so. What else have I got here? Actually, the Kingsley Jester. This sounds fantastic as well, especially with that boost function. There's so many of them. The Effectrode stuff's amazing. The Williams Audio tone benders are amazing. All that sort of stuff. So I can't pick one because, if I had to pick just one, I can live without anything and live with anything as well. You just make it work. What you've got, you make it work. And so I don't think I could really choose one. But, the Kingsley stuff, the Effectrode stuff is fantastic. Monkey Magic. Well, you're not going to fall over it, I suppose. Orange amps look so cool. And yeah, I've bought my orange amp a specific cab, which you can maybe see over my shoulder there. It's lime green. And the reason for that was because I have my kind of Zilla 2x12 Studio Pro Bluesbreaker cab, and I've now got the speakers in there to work with my JTM 45 clone. And I prefer different speakers with the orange, and whenever I plug the orange into the other speakers, it was like, yeah, it sounds great, but it's not quite where I want it to be. So I've bought it its own cab with its own speakers in there, and it sounds amazing. So I'm going to be playing around with that in the coming months, pairing it with the Marshall JTM45 and things like that. But yeah, I kind of went for lime green on it. It showed up on eBay, and I kind of was... I'll be honest, I was kind of hoping it was going to look more hideous and gaudy than it actually does with the orange amp on top of it. I think it actually looks pretty cool, and there's definitely a citrus theme going on there. But yeah, I'm not going to fall over it, that is for sure. It is, you can see it from outer space, I think. Yusuf Kasim again. My favourite tone has to be the Strat into the amp. Don't know why, but it sounded a bit like Rory Gallagher. Great, I'll take that. It also sounded like you were playing Rosalie by Thin Lizzy on the Strat. I think it was probably just sort of generic rock in A rather than Rosalie specifically, but great song. Might be wrong though. What Strat model is that? Now, I've put this out here. I do get quite a lot of comments about this guitar. Whenever I bring it out on the channel, people kind of wanting to know all about it. And I've thought about making a sort of standalone video about how I came to own this guitar, what it is, because it's not necessarily as it looks. Again, as with the video on how I mix the audio, if you are interested in that, let me know in the comments and I'll put that feature together. But it is a great sounding guitar, this. I bought it in on Denmark Street in London. It's a wonderful thing, but it does have a bit of a story behind it, so I will tell that if there's enough interest there. Guitaristi. Original JTM45 had 5881 tubes, then they switched to KT66s. And yes, you're absolutely right. I said in the demo of my JTM45 that I wanted to restore it from running on 6L6s to the original KT66s. Now, the very, very first JTM45s, the kind of offsets and the coffin logos and things, they did originally run 5881s, but mine is a replica of a sort of mid-60s Plexi JTM45, and they, I think, were only run on KT66s back in the day. I'm by no means an expert on the history of JTM45, so let me know if I'm wrong on that, but for my amp and the amp that it's a clone of, the original tubes were the KT66s, but you're absolutely right, they were originally 5881s when they first kind of emerged in the sort of early 60s, I believe. Brian Carter, that amp sounds fantastic, Joe. And I should say that out of all the kind of amp and gear demos I've done, my demo of the Vajra JTM45 is probably the one I've had the most kind of positive feedback for. Pretty much everybody who watched that loved how that amp sounded, and I'm blown away by it myself. It's an astonishing sounding thing. It sounds great with any guitar/pedal combo. The builder has left some seriously good vibes in that amp. It's gone to the right home. May you enjoy it for a very long time, mate. And yeah, I absolutely intend to. And I think there was another comment. I don't know if I didn't screenshot it. Someone said, I'll drive 400 miles. Can you sell me that amp? Sorry, it's a lifer for me. It's a great sounding thing. And as you say, very sad that the original build of that amp passed away shortly after building it. But yeah, he has left some very good vibes in it, and it is just an amazing sounding piece of kit. Devonte Trackmasters. Hi Joe, somebody told me that Neodymium speakers do need regassing after some time. Is that true? First I've heard of it. If it is, it might be. And the reason I put this in there is if any of you folks have any information about that, please do let me know in the comments, and hopefully Devonte Trackmasters reads it. I haven't heard of Neo speakers needing regassing. Does that mean like recharging the magnet or something? I honestly don't know. But if you have any information about that, please do let us know in the comment section. Where are we? Jack John, in your personal experience, what have your favourite PAF pickups you've tried so far? Now, this is an interesting one, and I think there's a bigger question here from my perspective at least, which is, I get asked fairly often what's my favourite PAF and what's the best PAF. And the honest answer is, it completely depends on which guitar you're putting it into. Now, all PAFs originally back in the sort of late 50s were slightly different from each other, overall. Slightly different magnets, different winds and things like that. So it depends on which particular PAF a builder is trying to clone as to, whether it's more accurate than another one or not. But also it very much depends on the guitar. And this is true for any guitar pickup in any sort of model of guitar, but especially for PAFs. You really need to match the PAF to a certain guitar for it to really be in its happy place. And a good example is the Monty's PAF. It's my favourite PAF in a thin line, like a 335 style guitar. Absolutely amazing, and I've tried it against different PAFs in that style of guitar, and I've always preferred it. In my big heavy Les Paul Custom, I thought they sounded a little bit underpowered. They just weren't sort of suiting that guitar. in a thin line, they are amazing. And there is a video coming out this month, in September, comparing the Monty's PAFs to the throwback SLE 101s, which are kind of like so vintage correct it hurts. And I try those two pairs of pickups in a Les Paul and my Heritage 535. And I won't spoil that video, it's an interesting one. But you need to match the pickups to a certain guitar. And the throwbacks, they're not leaving my Les Paul standard. I put them in there to demo them because most people will kind of associate PF pickups with like the burst Les Pauls. So I thought put it into a Sunburst Les Paul standard to shoot the standalone demo and then ultimately put them in the guitar I was going to put them in. They're not leaving. They sound amazing and they're dialed into perfection now at least, and they're incredible. And I preferred them in the Les Paul to the Monty's in the Les Paul. So it completely depends. If you're looking at like 100% vintage accuracy, I think the throwbacks are probably the most accurate I've personally tried. They're up there with like Wiz and Dave Stevens. The Monty's are my favourite in a thin line, and it really depends on the tone you're after, because they all did sound different, the guitar they're going in, and all that sort of stuff. Some of the slightly overwound PAFs, I love the OX4 Hot Dwaynes and my Les Paul Custom. They're not moving from that guitar. They really suit that. I call that guitar the Juggernaut now, because it's so sort of direct and punchy for sort of riff-based stuff. But the throwbacks in my Les Paul are great. So I don't have a favourite. I have favourite combinations of certain PAFs with certain guitars, but I don't have a favourite standalone pickup. It's different for everybody. It's completely subjective. Jeremiah McCann. I never really heard a difference in my rig, but I always felt a difference in the hands. I was a Les Paul player my entire career and only recently started playing Fender, and it felt very stiff. I put round cores on my Fenders and all is well. Great videos as always, my friend. Thank you, Jeremiah. And yeah, I think that was pretty much my summation. That was the video comparing hex core strings with round core strings. And I agree with that, and I think I said so in the outro as well. There were some tonal differences, but they were very, very small. The much bigger difference was the feel under the fingers. So if you want to explore different feels, absolutely experiment. If you're wanting to go with one or the other for true vintage tone, or because one sounds a certain way, you could probably make one set sound like the other simply by adjusting your playing style before you look at pedals and amp settings and speakers and all that sort of stuff. So both were fantastic, just a slightly different feel under the fingers. That was pretty much it. And the final question this month from Chris Chapman. Nearly every offset I have, and I've got a few, has a StewMac shim. Just seems to be a prerequisite. Some tongue twister for me. I'll take playability over what little you might lose in so-called tone. And I think that was, again, pretty much my take on that video as well. Having the cardboard shim and the wooden StewMac shim compared to not having a shim in there at all, there were some subtle tonal differences, but ultimately having the neck shimmed made that telly playable. And that's what really matters. Yes, there might be subtle differences in the type of shim, but ultimately, if you might think it sounds better without the shim in there, and you could be right, but if you then can't play above the 8th fret, the guitar's pretty useless. So, playability is much more important than what little difference you might get in tone when it comes to using a shim. So there we are, folks. That's the Q&A for August 2021. YouTube sort of goes through a slight sort of lull over the summer, but it seems to be picking up again now. Viewing's going up and comments are going up. So please do carry on commenting, and as always, I'll address any sort of the really relevant, important questions you have at the end of September. So we've got a few good videos coming up in this coming month. We have the Hageman drive pedal. This thing sounds great. We've got that comparison with the throwback SLE 101s with the Monty's PAFs. That's a really interesting one. And also comparing the original 6L6 tubes that my JTM 45 had with the KT66s I had put in there, and the differences that may or may not make. So some pretty interesting ones coming up. But yeah, thank you ever so much for watching, folks. Apologies for the weird lighting again. Please do comment underneath with any more questions you might have for next month's Q&A, and carry on commenting under the videos for the next month. That's how I put these videos together. I just go through every comment from the previous month and pick out some of the most sort of interesting and relevant ones. So thanks ever so much, folks, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye-bye.